All right, so Ricardo, you will talk about Dune Prophecy, at least the first two episodes, right? Now, pre-ramble time, I'll just keep it short and sweet. I mean, no surprise, I love the Dune films, right? Or I should say, Denis Villeneuve's Dune films, right? The second one, the one that came out this year, sorry, could very well be my number one pick, right? As far as best movies of the year goes at the moment, right? But even though I was excited to, at the idea of, we're actually doing a spin off series and a prequel series as well, so while Denis take his time to do Dune Messiah, right, which, yes, he is going to be doing, right, yeah, we could have this series to kind of hold things over for the time being, right? I was just hearing iffy things about this show. I was hearing that it was dull. It didn't match to what the needed with the first two Dune films and whatnot. So my plan really was just to wait until the series, or say the season, ends in late December, and then I'll just binge everything, and then I'll just make my opinion, right? But yeah, I was actually excited that you wanted to check it out as soon as it dropped, right? So at the time of
Right.
us recording this, the second episode dropped last night. So yeah, Ricardo, take it away. What is Dune Prophecy about, and how is it going so far?
Well, the one person I've seen giving it not the biggest score is the same people who give Penguin a mediocre score, and we kind of fucking love that. So, uh, this show is excellent, by the way. I actually so far I loving it so far. So it's what it is. It's roughly 10,000 years before the events of the first Dune. Uh, the shenanigans involving the Harkonnen, well, somebody involved in the Harkonnen family, but it's basically the early events, or, well, right after what is known as the Butlerian Jihad. And what that is an event where somebody named Butler, she basically started this massive revolution against what we call the thinking machines, aka AI. And that explain a classic question about well, where all the computers are in Dune. Well, no, they're destroyed, right? They don't allow for machines. All thinking machines are um not allowed. And what they do is they offer that from a central conceit, and we get to see basically the early schools of humanity, the beginning of these three schools of thought of how to make do without these thinking machines, right? So we know the Bene Gesserits, we know other groups like I forget the emperor, but basically the emperor. We get to see like a descendant, a very distant ancestor of that emperor, and then the Mentats, right? And basically the core conceit is that the Bene Gesserits, or the early Bene Gesserits, started manipulating the situation to set up, well, the big prophecy uh in Dune, as we understand it. That's how they set up the first conceit. And yeah, it's solid stuff. It's the Game of Thrones, usual Game of Thrones skullduggery stuff, right? But Dune is the one franchise, that could, get away with it. It's like could pull this off and get away with it. And I'll admit I'm biased because of the Dune universe. But they make it work. Like it's the first two episodes is this mystery involving somebody who seemed to have the ability to, avoid the Bene Gesserit's power in some way, shape, or form, and they get into a whole conceit about what the Bene Gesserits are, the princesses who join them, and I don't want to explain all the details of this skullduggery. I just enjoying it so far in terms of the first two episodes, right? All you need to know is the Bene Gesserits don't play. They don't mess around. Everything they always have backups for their backups, and everything is just the mother superior, who's the head of the Bene Gesserits, manipulating the situation, and doing a really good job of, he does brilliant smart moves and smart moving, as a leader. And yeah, so far I've been thoroughly enjoying this. Like it's just really, really, again, this is skullduggery and these high sci-fi setting, and all of this, power broken and manipulation. And they basically, what they do in the early couple episodes is tell off, well, the son of Frank Herbert, his early books, where he wrote a bunch of books involving like the early days of the Bene Gesserits. They kind of tell that story in like the intro to set up what's going on here. And why this really works is that, well, it's just just the production and set design and everything around it. It's just, Mark Strong is a kind of weird side character who's like the head of a certain I forget the name of the house Coriolis or whatever it is, that he's like the main power broker involving all of the materials. But then they have the mysterious person who shows up as your boy from Raised by Wolves, the star that, and they just set up everything. Everything is set up really well. It's well made, well done. it unfortunately does a couple of crimes that I usually don't hate this stuff, but it's uh I usually think, which is they try to sexy things up. So you have a nightclub scene in the first episode that just, oh, it's a nightclub scene and they're doing drugs and having sex, but like it's such a typical like nightclub scene. Like, no, it's like, why does this nightclub look like a normal nightcub? Stuff like that just kind of take me out it, because like, oh well, you could have just write a better scene to set that up, whatever. And then they have another scene in the second episode, which is a sex scene, just a straight up pulling from Game of Thrones in that way. Like, they had a sex scene up in that way, and it largely feels unnecessary, but like, whatever, I get. Yeah, you had to do that to pull the audience. You wouldn't pull otherwise, so it's fine. But yeah, I done digging it so far. They have at the end of the second episode is a great like reveal about what's going on, because like something happens in the first episode and they're paying that off now, and it just does a great job of just setting it up. And it's that, all I'll just say is it's just something akin to a dream sequence, and it's really well done and terrifying. Like what they do there and how they set that up is like, it's really great stuff. And yeah, I just not mad at any of this so far. If it's any complaints, it's just a little on the slow end. But because it doesn't bother me. I'm a fan of the Dune universe. It don't really bother me too much as it is, because I'm into the Dune universe. So I like the extra world building. You already sell me the ticket anyway. Even if this was bad, I'd be interested in it, and be able to follow it, all things considered. And that's why it mostly works, all things for what it is. But yeah, I thoroughly loving this. So yeah, so far I give it a real high score. I'm loving it. This is probably going to make one of the better of the years. They follow from Denis Villeneuve's aesthetic really well. So none of that I'm mad at, and it just good actors, good side characters. I mean, Emily Watson is great in this. She's like actually like intimidating and terrifying as Mother Superior, if you know who, or at least the Mother Superior, and who she is in terms of the context of the story. Because she's, well, just not really a spoiler, but she's a Harkonnen. They set up all of this so well, all things considered. So I digging the hell out of this. Yeah, so far I'm loving it.
All right, well, color me surprised you, because the way how, folks like IGN and them was saying, it's like, oh, this is such a misfire, blah, 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 and
Again,
blah,
these are the same. These are the same people. These are the same people who give Penguin a 5. So
That's true. That's true.
I can't really take that too seriously, to be
Yeah,
honest. It's
but
fine.
I won't lie. It was to the point where I wasn't even sure if I wanted to wait until the season ended, right? But judging from what you told me, I'm like, yeah, I could afford to. I actually would love, or at least I hope I get the chance to by year's end, yeah, to actually watch the whole season and then give my opinion on it, man. So yeah, thank you for the review, man. Yeah. All right, so sticking with fantasy for a little bit now. Let's talk about, I should say, I will talk about the second and final season of Arcane, right? So,
Sure.
Ricardo and I mean, you and I, we talked about the first season back in 2021.
I don't remember you reviewing the first one with you. It's I think it was Ashton.
I think so. Yes.
Right.
Come to
Yeah.
think of it, yeah. But yeah, I absolutely enjoyed that first season, right? But Ricardo, you saw the first season, right?
I did not, ultimately. I know people like this, but I just could not get into this stuff. I know it's popular, but I didn't find the time, and I couldn't get myself to care, because I don't play. Was the name of that game?
League of Legends. League of Legends, yeah.
I never played. I never played. I never care about the lore. I know it popular. I know it good. I'll find the time. I'll look. It'll just be a day. I'll just be like 3 o'clock in the morning when I come home. I'm like, hey, let me check this out, and I'll gushing about it after the fact. But like, I just never find the time to watch it.
All right. Now, what's so funny about this, right? Just to jump into the review here. What's so funny is that you say you never bothered to watch the show because you never had an interest in playing the games, right? I never played the
Yes.
games, nor do I think I will have the time to play the games. But I took the time to watch Arcane, right? So that's weird to me, right? People will say, dude, you need to watch Arcane. It's one of the best shows on TV and blah, 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 right? But, people will tell me after the fact, after I watch the show, dude, you need to play the game. You need to play League of Legends. I'll be like, what? I don't have time to play that. I'm sorry, I just don't. I'm not into that, right? Sorry, just time, right? But anyway,
Sure.
but yes, the first season, absolutely enjoyed, right? And I will say,
Yeah.
because of the gap of time, right? Remember that first season came out 3 years ago, right? I will say, unless you are a League of Legends nerd or you just know every single thing when it comes to Arcane, I would say whether you know everything about it or not, I would strongly recommend that you rewatch the first season, because I felt like this season, this new season 2 follows up right where that last season stops off, right?
Right,
So
right,
there's a lot that goes on here, so I will try to keep it short, right? So basically, we are introduced to this city called Piltover, right? But there's the higher section, there's a utopian section which is Piltover, but then you have Zorn, which is like the underbelly, is though it's like the belly of the beast, pretty much, right? And in Zorn, we are introduced to these sisters, Vi and Jinx. Vi is voiced by McGill Healy Steinfeld, and
right.
Jinx, formerly known as Powder, is voiced by my next girl, Ella Purnell, right? Who, by the way, is
Right, right, right.
having a role this year, Dread.
Yeah,
Is on a role this year because, yeah,
yeah,
we just saw her in Fallout, which is another
Fallout,
great video
right.
game adaptation, right?
Right,
So.
she was the other girl in Star Trek Prodigy. She was in a
Oh,
couple
okay.
things.
I didn't know she was in
Yeah,
Prodigy as well. I didn't know that,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
Yeah. I'm not too
yeah.
familiar with her work compared to Haley. I know most
Right.
of
Well, Haley Simon is
Haley's
a big star.
projects, right? Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Right?
Haley Simon is a big star. But yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So in the first season, they set up that, they were working together, they're just trying to survive. Is the two of them and the two other friends, they just pretty much rob from the rich to survive and whatnot, right? But then in the process, they learn about this whole to get into this is pretty detailed, right? But it involves pretty much something called Hestech. So it's basically the idea of being able to use science to pull from magic, right? Being able to control magic with science, right? Now the higher ups at Piltover feel that they could use this to, quote unquote, better the society. They can make things better, but in their mind, it's more about, using it to create weapons and all that kind of stuff, right? So when threats happen, they could defend themselves, right? But then you have this guy by the name of Jace, right? Who believes, no, we could actually use this to help, create progress, to help people and whatnot, right? And then he has this relationship with Victor, a fellow scientist, right? Who is disabled, right? He has this bum leg, right? And he and all this is like, no, and he agrees with them, right? So at first it's like, yes, we could be using this device and this magic and all that kind of stuff, even though it's dangerous, we could be using this to improve things, right? And it starts off like that at first, right? But as you'd expect from a show like this, it have people who have ulterior motives, so eventually
Yeah.
that leads into Jace more or less joining up with them and kind of siding with them, while Victor is all about, trying to see the potential of this hex tech technology and, just how far this whole magic science thing could go, right? And yeah, in the process, he becomes this whole other being who could more or less travel through time and space. It's a lot. It's crazy, right? But in the process now, through all of this now, there's this war between basically both sides of this society, right? And yeah, in the process, it splits the relationship between Violet and Powder, right? Their father figure, Vander, he dies in quotes, in quotes, that's all I'll say. And yeah, they become like, well, Violet and Jinx, or I should say Powder, who becomes Jinx now. Yeah, they become like bitter rivals, right? I just see how what goes on in this world. You see how, yeah, that's how it's very Game of Thrones inspired at the end of the day, right? We just see how these players get involved in all of this, right? But it's all just about finding your potential, finding the potential in this world and in this magic and all that kind of stuff, right? So yeah, basically season 2 just follows up after that, because what happens is that Jinx pretty much blows up the base of operations where, all these higher ups reside, and they have the meetings and whatnot. So now Jinx is pretty much a terrorist, right? She's pretty much a
Right.
terrorist in everybody's eyes. Everybody just more or less trying to track her down. You have this law enforcement group called Enforcers, and one of them is Caitlyn. And they set this up in the first season, right? So Caitlyn actually has a relationship with Violet, right? So it's
Right.
sort of like a on again, off again thing, but then it kind of leads on the romantic side of things. And then, for reasons they kind of split up. So it's always that kind of back and forth between the two of them. But Violet at the same time is just trying to escape her past, right? She feels bad, that Jinx that her sister Jinx let her down, and she was really trying to help her out, but Jinx is like kind of pushing her away and whatnot. And eventually they kind of reconcile, but it's just them basically trying to find their place in this world, right? So that's all I'll say about that, right? But ultimately, just to wrap things up, it really centers on Jace and Victor, right? And just their strained relationship. Victor really trying to tap into this potential of this weird power source. That's pretty much what the Arcane is, right? It's just this magical power source that everybody's trying to acquire so they can become powerful in their own way, right? And you just see how things play out from there, right? So, for you Arcane fans or League of Legends fans, right? If I butchered the synopsis for this, please forgive me, right? But to be fair here, right, I'll throw this out here to y'all specifically, right? If y'all could sit down and explain to me exactly what was going on in this particular season, I'll be like,
Correct.
okay, you know this shit better than I do, right? In
Correct.
particular, the stuff with Jace and Victor, right? So, if I could just get the negatives out of the way, right? While this is the second and final season of this, right? I felt that this was a step down from the last one. Reason being is because one thing about this series, right? It's a multi-character story, right? So we're not just centering on one person. You have like about 6 or 8 or 10 people that you're basically following, and you're just seeing how they all connect in this grand world, right? But I felt that there was a clearer focus in terms of what was going on, even though it is the intro to the story, right? We just talk about Dune, right? So basically, what we get here is this is basically Dune Part 1 and 2 that we get here, right? So Arcane Season 1 was the intro. It's kind of introducing us to the major players and what's going on and all that kind of stuff. And 2 is just the payoff. So it doesn't even stop to hold your hand and tell you, hey, remember what happened in Season 1 with this character? No, no, no. And that's one thing I have to give credit with this show here. It does not hold your hand. It does not tell you. It does not. It doesn't. It will give you flashbacks like this. Very blink and you miss it flashbacks or hints as to what went on. But if you don't remember, or if you didn't do a recap, you will be completely lost, right? But I actually applaud them for saying, look, watch season 1 before you jump into this. Like, if you jump into season 2 without remembering what happened in season 1, you will be lost, right? So I actually admire them for that, right? But at the same time, there's just so much going on that, yes, unfortunately, it's very overwhelming, right? And I think another reason why that was an issue for me is, simply put, this is the final season. So the way how this show is structured, right? So it's 9 episodes for each season, right? And 3 episodes are released every single week, right? So it's 3 weeks, 3 episodes per week, right? If we're doing the whole tree thing, right? The whole rule of tree thing, right? Wouldn't it make sense to have 3 seasons as a whole? I think that would make much more sense, right? It does the rule out of the show, right? And I felt like if we had another season, then the payoff for everything would have been worth it, right? I've really felt like this was 2 seasons just smushed together, and we just have to kind of make sense of everything because we know and love the characters. And yes, there are a lot of characters that you relate to, that you emphasize with, that you relate to, that you love, you know what I mean? But even though you're following them on their own journeys and their own conceits and whatnot, there's still a lot of things going on. There's a lot of spinning plates that's going on here, right? And for better or for worse, because this show oozes with style. There is style in literally every shot, every frame of every episode of this series is something stylish that's going on, right? And that is why, for me, even though I did not like this, I didn't actually prefer the first season over this, right? As a whole, I still think that this is one of the best animated series to come out in a long while, and also one of the best video game film adaptations to come out in years, in my opinion, right? Yeah, sometimes the style is overwhelming as well, you know what I mean? So again, sometimes the style just sort of overpowers you, right? And you're trying to hold on to the story. You're trying to be invested in what's going on, right? But then sometimes something stylistically would happen and it just sort of throws you off, right? So what I would say about this season as well too, right? Which is not a big gripe that I had, but it kind of works, right? But I understand it's both a weakness and a strength, right? Is that it's a much bigger, much more ambitious season compared to the last one, right? It does the story, in particular with Jason and Victor, right? Because a lot of stuff revolves around them, right? Talk just more existential stuff about time and life and existence and all these other things, right? That they put into the show, right? a lot more psychedelic, I would say, right? Just a
Right.
lot more trippy visuals as well, compared to the last season. Because yes, there will be the trippy stuff here or there, right, in the first season. But this one, I felt that they just ramp it up, boy. They just let their imaginations run wild, right? And on the subject of dare, right? So for me, one thing about this show that I admire, right? Is that and it's so weird when you think about it too, right? Is that it doesn't feel like a singular vision. It doesn't feel like okay. It's like I know that there are two it's Christian Link and Alex Yee, right? Those are the creators. These are the showrunners, right? But even though they are the one who create this series, right? It doesn't feel like a singular vision or like, oh, it's just these two guys who just came up with this thing, right? It always feels like a group effort. It really feels like a team of people sat down, came up with they must have gotten the concepts and the stories and whatnot from the creators and the writers and whatnot, right? But like everybody just sort of sat down and say, okay, this is why I want to bring to the table. This is why I want to put in. I want to do this. I want to do that, right? So while you're watching this show, and I really got that in the second season, right? It really feels like a team effort. It really feels like a labor of love. Like just all these talented, animators just came through and just came with, basically something that is literally a work of art. And like I said, every shot, there's something that goes on, right? There's always something so stylistic, so gorgeous, so beautiful, right? That, yes, at times it's overwhelming, but, when it all comes together is like just so unique, right? So yeah, at the end of the day, even though I didn't really enjoy the season as much as the first one, that's not to say that this is not a show that I will not go back to. This is one that I'm going to remember for a long while actually, and I do see many people going back to it and be like, wow, like like just all these things that I didn't pick up on the first view, upon my first view, and I wanna, like I'm now seeing it here and all these things, right? So let's get to the puzzles, right? So just to add to what it is I just said there, right? The quality is still here in the season, right? Just
Right.
stunning, stunning visuals, stunning animation. Just great uses of different styles of animation, right? Whether it's 2D or 3D, right? Just how they blend these things so seamlessly works, right? And the way I could understand why the show only had 2 seasons, right? Because it really does feel like you're watching a video game, Dread. It's not like say you're watching a TV show where okay, they could just keep the sets and they keep the equipment and they just shoot another season. No, it feels like if they were to have a third season, even though I think this show should have had a third season in retrospect, this shit looks difficult. Like it looks like something that would have taken them years to just put together, Dread. And I can't even begin to question how long it took to render, certain shots or to render a full episode though. That must have taken them like a whole week. That's the amount of detail that is packed into every episode. I'm just watching this, like this the art and the craft of it all. I'm just like, wow, boy, this no wonder they want to wrap this up, Dre. This shit look hard, boy. This shit look difficult to put together. It literally feels like you're watching a video game come to life, Dre. And I mean,
Right.
you know this better than me, right? Yeah, it's like you could just drop. Like if you do that series, it's like you could just drop a new entry every single year, unless, like, say the engine that you're using to create the game, you could do it easy, right? Nah, this shit look like it take like months to put together, Dread, right? And I just admire the effort and craft that's put into it, right? Voice acting, I would say pitch perfect in my opinion. Everybody comes through, everyone does their thing, there's no half-assery involved, everybody comes through. They bring so much depth into these characters as well, whether it's Steinfeld or Ella Purnell or Katie Leong who plays Caitlin, just great voice acting across the board, right? Also, I would say what's a step up from the last season, the use of music as well, right? So not surprising with a show like this, right? Because of the world that it's creating here, this sort of mix of cyberpunk and steampunk, right? With some high fantasy thrown into it as well, right? Yeah, you get some bangers. They will throw in they'll throw in like a emo pop, they will throw in like a rock song, they will throw in a couple of rap songs here or there, right? So like last season, for example, I heard a Pusha T song. I don't know what that song
Yeah.
was, to be honest. I don't think it wasn't like, I think the song was made for the show itself, right? But I just don't know the name of it, right? But yeah, there was some bangers. There was some bangers on the season here, right? What I also love, and again, this is just going back to the team effort, right? Where they, or at least the animators, are able to take the song and give it the right visual. They give it the right style, the right aesthetic, right? So, case in point, there's a post-punk song that plays, right? A post-punk rock song, right? And the visuals match it perfectly, I would say, right? And it fits, it does the world, it does the character that they're focusing on, because they don't just do stylish music video shit for the sake of it. It's all to kind of lay the groundwork for what's to come, right? But yeah, I thought that those moments were excellent. Right? Like, you could take those moments out and just watch those, like, like an average music video on YouTube. It is so well done, right? And they also, like I said, add to the world of the story itself, right? And yeah, in terms of where they took the stories, where they took the characters, I really dug that as well. But, and just where they progress certain things, I really admire as well. But again, at times it is just overwhelming, this the amount of things that goes on, right? And it's even worse because I never play the game. So I imagine,
Right.
if you are a League of Legends fan, you'd be like, yeah, I know what that is, I know what that is, I know what that is, I know who referencing there, blah blah blah. But for even people who just love the show because of how it was hyped back in 2021, I imagine even casual viewers who watch this and be like, I still understand what's going on, Like, I still enjoying it. I still being, like, a consuming this wondrous visual feast, if you will, right? But if you were to ask me after the fact what happened and why, I can't answer that, right? And I really, really got that with the whole Jason and Victor conceit, right? Because it is the weirdest aspect of the show. It's the most psychedelic and strange aspect of the show itself, right? And yet, much to my surprise, a majority of the sub teams now more or less connected to that, right? And what was going on there, right? And it's not to say that there isn't anything substantial going on there. There is, right? But it's just a lot that goes on that I just did not understand, right? And I felt that was really to the detriment of those other subplots, in particular the one with Violet and Jinx, because I felt like that is the strongest subplot. That is the strongest plot, I would say, out of this entire series, right? And I felt like that was more or less subdued because of that, right? And lastly, the ending is one that I liked, but I didn't love, to be honest, right? Keep in mind, this is the series finale, right? Again, I felt it was a lot of Jace and Victor stuff going on and not enough of Violet and Jinx. And where they end their arcs, and how I would say how they end the whole series is just basically, we could do this again. We could have another League of Legends series, but it doesn't have to be called Arcane, right? But the
Right.
idea is that the world is so big that, slight spoiler, it doesn't necessarily mean that this is the last that you will see of certain characters. They may appear to be dead, slight spoiler, but we don't know that for sure. And for all we know, and especially how the world of this show is with magic and space and time and whatnot, these characters could come back. The creators could just come up with something on the fly and just be like, yeah, we're just going to bring this character back just because, right? And they just justify it and boom, that's it, right? They could do that, right? That's how big this world is. They can literally do whatever they want, right? And they establish that throughout this whole show that literally anything is possible, right? I think that's why people are drawn to this world. That's why people are drawn to the show, right? It's just that literally the sky's the limit, anything is possible, right? But still, I still felt like there should have been more finality to it. It just almost felt like, okay, we just had to kind of stop it at this point, and I guess maybe in the next few years when we get the money, we could do another show. I guess it kind of feels like that. I didn't really feel like, okay, this is the end, and I can move on with my life. It really feels like you want to know more, play the games, or you want to know more. I guess when Netflix decide they want to have another League of Legends series, cool. You'll see what happens next, right? And that's that. But as a whole, I would still put this season here as one of the best TV shows I've seen for the year thus far, right? But it's not going to be a top 5, right? Normally I do a top 10 when it comes to these things, so it will be a top 10 for sure, but it's not going to be a top 5. I already have like my top 5 kind of laid out there, but I want to put Arcane up there, man, but I just felt like they just sort of rushed things. I felt like we could have had an extra season to flesh things out even more, because again, there's just so much things going on here that it's sort of hard to follow, right? And I kind of understand logistically why they had to kind of rush things and why they had to wrap things up. Because yes, something as ambitious as this show, boy, I imagine was probably like a pain in the ass to do. Like a full season, probably legit took 3 years to do, right? So I understand, right? But at the same time, man, like. Nah, you could. I think they still had it in them to pull it off, right? But I don't know what was going on behind the scenes. I guess they just decided, here's what, before we exhaust ourselves, let me just wrap this thing up so we could just move on to something else, right? So I don't know, right? But I felt it really was to the detriment of the show itself, right? But at the same time, while I still enjoyed the first season over this, that's not to say that I didn't come out of this, absolutely enjoying this, right? Because yes, hands down, this is one of the best animated series I think I've ever seen, right? In general, right? Just for the sheer scope of it all, just the ambition behind it, just the meshing of like style and substance together, right? You don't see shows like this any day, like whether it's live action or otherwise, right? You don't see shows like this, right? And I would say even like you, Ricardo, who've never played the games, I still strongly recommend checking out that show just for the stylistic stuff in it as well, right? But at the end of the day, just to wrap things up, there's a lot of like emotional depth to this, right? There's a lot of like great character development and growth in this show as well, right? So it's not all style, over substance, right? But at times, it could still feel, at times, right, that it is style over substance. But I do applaud the show for always knowing when to find the right balance and just knowing, yeah, here's what, right? Fuck it. Let me just amp this scene up, Dre. Let me just make this so stylistic as fuck, Dre, that you have to tune into the next episode to see what happens next, right? So yeah, this is hands down one of the most ambitious shows I've seen in a long, long, long while. And I think that this show will have longevity just off of that alone, right? So yes, I mean, whether you are like a League of Legends fan or not, boy, there's just so much in this show to admire, so much to pull from and and analyze or whatnot. I could see people going back to the second season and being, oh, this is what happened and this is why and all that kind of stuff, right? But just off of my first viewing, it was just a lot to take in. But I feel like if I were to watch it, like I don't know, a couple of years from now, I'll appreciate it a lot more, right? But still, we could have had a third season, man. And I think if we had a third season, I could have put this up there as one of the best things to ever come out in the history of man, right? But as it stands right now, this season, this final season here, I will still give it a decent to strong 4 out of 5, right? And the show as a whole, I will give a light 4.5 out of 5, right? Yeah, this is one of the best shows out there, and I would say not just on Netflix. I would just say period, right? But again, you don't have to know about the world of League of Legends, because I went into the show not knowing anything about about that franchise at all, right? And I still came out of the show really enjoying it, right? But yeah, I mean, despite the fact that we could have had a third season, right? Third season, that still doesn't change the fact that yeah, this is one of the best animated shows I would say ever made, right? So expect to see this in the long run popping up on a bunch of like best of lists when it comes to just animated content, right? And yeah, definitely recommend checking out Arcane in general, right? Since the series is wrapped up.